is your baby going to get here? So this is a big and exciting question. And since you're watching this video, I guess that important due date is getting closer and closer. So in this video, we're going to talk about why is it that doctors are more and more often inducing at 39 weeks when our bodies naturally come into labor some weeks later. So we're going to look at what is actually best and safest for baby and for you. Hi, my name is Emma and I am now 35 weeks pregnant. So exciting. I'm a prenatal yoga teacher and this channel is all about supporting women through different cycles of life. And at the moment, as you can imagine, it is quite pregnancy focused. I'm a little bit on the hippie granola kind of side, so if that's your thing, please do subscribe to the channel. So in this video, we're going to talk about the 40-week due date myth. Then we're going to look at baby's development in those final weeks of pregnancy. We're going to look at risks for mum throughout those final weeks. And we're going to look at ease of birth. So let's start with the 40-week myth. When you get pregnant, you are given a 40-week due date. And this is first calculated on the first day of your last period. And then it's updated with your first scans to be more accurate, because maybe you ovulated at a different time that month, or maybe the embryo took a while to implant after ovulation. So there's lots of little variables here which are only going to change your due date by a couple of days or so. But once you actually get close to your due date, a lot of decisions start to be made. Like, on the day, this is when your induction is going to be, or now you're exactly this day, we're going to do this procedure. Or at least it can be like that with some doctors. So having an accurate due date is really important. Now, the myth is that 40 weeks is the most likely day that you're going to give birth. This is not true. In an important study in 2001 by Smith, they looked at 1,514 different women and calculated when they naturally came into labor, so spontaneous labor. For first-time mothers, this was 40 weeks and 5 days. And if they had had children before, it was 40 weeks and 3 days. So you might be rolling your eyes, oh, what difference does 5 days make? Well, it does make quite a difference once you get closer to the day. And having a realistic expectation in your mind of, okay, most women, so it's 50% of women had given birth by 40 weeks and 5 days, first-time mothers. 75% of women had given birth by 41 weeks and 2 days. So there's only a remaining 25% who still haven't come into spontaneous labor at that time. It's just good to have expectations of when your body is naturally ready to give birth. At the end of the day, we are designed by nature, and both our bodies and our babies need to be ready to be born. And there have been some interesting studies, although it's not conclusive, that actually baby decides when they're ready to be born by releasing some hormones and chemicals which are detected by the mother once the lungs have finished developing. So I think that's a really interesting theory. Okay, so now you have your new due date, which is 40 weeks 5 days or 40 weeks 3 days if you've had a baby before. Now let's look at baby development in those final weeks of pregnancy. So what is the baby doing in there in those final weeks of pregnancy? So I got some great information from Every Week Counts, which is an Australian initiative to reduce the number of inductions. So I do recommend checking that website out. We're going to look at the difference between 35 weeks and up to 40 weeks. A lot of development is happening at this time in our babies. So if your baby is born at 35 weeks, they are not fully developed, and most likely there's a 77% chance they will need to be admitted to the NICU, the intensive care unit. This dramatically reduces week by week up to week 40. So it's good to have them in there a while longer. So let's look at the NICU admittance. So 77% at 35 weeks, 48% at 36 weeks, 23% at 37 weeks, 13% at 38 weeks, 9% at 39 weeks, and 8% at 40. So reasons that your baby might be admitted to the NICU are: one, it could just be that they don't have enough fat deposited on their body and they can't regulate their temperature, so they need to be in an incubator. Secondly, their lungs are not fully developed yet. We're going to talk about that, so they're going to need assistance breathing. Then there are other reasons, such as they have an infection, or maybe you as the mother got an infection which spread to the baby during labor. Or it could also be a traumatic delivery which sends them into the NICU for a little while. The good news is that at 35 weeks and onwards, stillbirth rates are extremely, extremely low. So your baby is very likely to survive. At 35 weeks, the stillbirth rate is just 2 in every 10,000 babies. So it's an extremely low chance. And interestingly, the stillbirth rate increases from 35 to 40 weeks from every 2 in 10,000 babies up to every 7 in 10,000 babies. But the risk is still extremely, extremely low. So what are the main things baby is developing at this time? They are the lungs and the brain. So first of all, let's look at the lungs. So inside the lungs, you have lots of little bubbles and air sacs called alveoli. And these air sacs need this fluid called surfactant inside them to stop them from collapsing on the exhale. So they breathe in, they breathe out, and it needs to retain its shape. If there's no surfactant, then the alveoli can close up, which makes it difficult, if not impossible, to breathe. So surfactant is one of the last things that the lungs produce in the baby's development. And this might be the compound that triggers labor in the mother. The good news is NICUs are very well prepared to deal with these sorts of breathing issues, so it's a short-term issue that baby can overcome. Of course, you don't want your baby to be in the NICU. Those are precious hours and days for bonding, for establishing breastfeeding, if that's what you want to do. So if we can have our babies come out and able to breathe straight away, then I see that as a huge plus. Let's look at the brain. So the brain, I think, is the most interesting part, because what blew my mind is at 35 weeks, the baby's brain weighs 2/3 of what it will weigh at 40 weeks. So if you look at the baby's brain at 35 weeks, halve it and add that to it again, that's how big the brain will be at 40 weeks. So there's a lot of brain development happening in these final weeks. And there have been a few different studies that suggest that babies born earlier, so at like 37 weeks compared to 40, are more likely to experience learning difficulties or to score lower in tests 10 to 12 years later. I'll link those in the description, and I'll put some thing on the screen so you can see a couple of these studies, but I think these are really interesting. This is like the main argument to keep your baby cooking, because these are long-term effects that we're seeing. And it doesn't seem to be anything dramatic, but it does seem to be statistically significant. And I feel like nature must have designed it this way for a reason, right? We'll talk more about why doctors are inducing at 39 weeks more and more regularly, especially in my next video, which is on induction. But yeah, nature has done it this way for a reason, and I think that it most likely points to the brain development. And if we didn't have amazingly advanced NICUs and medicine available, then a lot of babies would not be able to survive due to breathing difficulties, etc. So before we come on to safety for mum, this is part of my birth series, which has been really fun to research and prepare, and I'm hoping I can get them all out before I give birth, because I am exhausted now. Third trimester fatigue is real, so I'm trying to get these videos out before I give birth. The next video is on induction versus natural spontaneous labor, and for me this was the main topic of research that I did for my birth, and what I found the most interesting and controversial. So if that is a video you'd like to watch, please subscribe, and I will be posting it very soon. I'm going to film it straight after this, so it should be ready in just a couple of days. Okay, now safety for mum. So unfortunately, from 37 weeks onwards, the risks for mum start to increase, and in pretty much every field. So preeclampsia goes up, placental conditions, infections, nearly all risks are increasing week by week for mum, which is why regular appointments with your doctor are so important, and just keeping in tune with your body. And if something feels off, that's your mother's intuition. You know your body best. I know that's so easy to say, but feeling pregnant, you just start to think that every crazy feeling is just pregnancy and normal. But do stay vigilant, and if anything seems weird, do get in touch with your doctor. This leads us on to ease of birth. So your risks, as we discussed, are going up week by week, but regardless of whether your baby is smaller or bigger, as natural spontaneous labor is going to be easier to deal with than an induced one. And this is important to mention, especially if the day you give birth is particularly important to you, or if having a medication-free birth, if that's important to you, then waiting until your body and your baby are ready to do it naturally and spontaneously is going to be easier for you. And I will go again into more detail on this in the next video of this series. So it's all a big balancing act. So just to conclude what we talked about today, so update your due date to 40 weeks 5 days, or 40 weeks 3 days if you've had a baby before. That's important. Your doctor won't accept it, but in your mind, know that you have a few more days probably to wait to go into it spontaneously. We talked about our baby's development in those final weeks and how it's very important for their lung development and for their brain development to keep them in there until you're ready until 40 weeks or so. We looked at risks at mum going up throughout those weeks. So staying vigilant and seeing your doctor is important. And finally, the ease of birth is going to be, labor is going to be easier if you wait for your body to be ready for labor. It's not going to be harder because your baby is bigger. It's going to be easier. And I think that's kind of birth timing covered. Please do stay tuned for the next video because I think it's such an important one and I want to go into a lot more detail on a few of these different topics. But thank you for watching the video to the end, and I hope your pregnancy is going super, super well. If you didn't watch the previous video in this series, which is Do You Need a Birth Plan? I recommend checking that out. I just think it's important that every single person is different with what they want out of their birth, and it's important to think about these decisions. So do check that video out as well. Thank you, and wishing you a happy pregnancy, and do check out my prenatal yoga videos if you need some assistance, even in these last weeks. Movement is so important. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you, bye.